In the small town of North Conway, New Hampshire, 14-year-old Abigail Hernandez disappeared while walking home from school. For 9 long months, her family never gave up hope, even though they feared the worst. Little did they know, Abby was trapped by a man who treated her horribly. Despite the pain, she stayed strong and brave, which helped her escape against all odds. This is Abby's story, an incredible journey of survival and courage in the face of true evil. Please support my channel by hitting the subscribe button and turning on notifications. Every parent, to keep their child safe, tries to explain why trusting strangers can be dangerous. They teach kids not to talk to strangers, follow them, or ever get into a stranger's car. These talks are so important, especially when explaining the reasons and what could happen if these rules are ignored. Abigail Hernandez's family and early life. Abigail, or Abby, Maria Hernandez was born on October 12, 1998, in Manchester, New Hampshire, near the Merrimack River. She was the youngest of 2 daughters, born to Ruben and Zenya Hernandez. Abby grew up close to her older sister, Sarah. Her mum worked as a nurse at a local hospital, and her dad was a sales agent. Overall, the Hernandez family was happy, strong, and doing well. When Abby was in middle school, her parents separated. After the divorce, her father remarried and started a new family. Abby and her sister stayed with their mum. Ruben still helped with money, but his relationship with his older daughters faded to occasional birthday and Christmas greetings. As a child, Abby was active, curious, and very social. She had lots of friends and loved trying new hobbies and activities. Abby played sports, was good at art, enjoyed photography, loved reading, and learned foreign languages quickly. Around age 12, Abby joined a local outdoor club where she went camping, hiking, and fell in love with the mountains. She also became skilled in surviving in the wild, using what she learned on her adventures. It's not surprising, given New Hampshire's natural beauty with its forests, mountains, and rivers. It's a paradise for hiking, climbing, and other outdoor adventures. This state draws adventurers, thrill-seekers, and nature lovers from all over the country. Abigail Hernandez's classmates described her as brave, smart, friendly, and determined. She easily connected with people and could join in on any conversation. Abby wasn't afraid of challenges and always spread her optimism to those around her. She was always active, constantly moving, and dreaming big for her future. The summer of 2013 was full of exciting moments for Abby when she returned to school in September. She had plenty of stories about where she had been, what she had seen, and everything she had done during her summer vacation. By then, the 14-year-old had started dating a boy named Jimmy, who was a year older and went to the same school. Abby's mum, Zenya, knew about the relationship and didn't mind her daughter dating him. Vanished on her way home from school in early October 2013. With fall break and her 15th birthday coming up, Abby was busy planning a hiking trip with her outdoor club. She had even gotten new hiking boots as a gift, but they were a bit tight. To break them in, she decided to wear them to school. On October 9th, Abby went to school like usual. After classes, she planned to take a walk through a nearby park, but promised her mum she wouldn't be out too late. However, by around 5 p.m., when Abby still hadn't come home, Zenya decided to call her. To her surprise, Abby's phone was turned off. At first, Zenya tried not to worry. She thought maybe Abby had met up with friends and that her phone had died. But when a few hours passed with no word from Abby, Zenya started to panic. She called Abby's friends and teachers to find out when she had left school and where she might have gone. The school told her that Abby had left right after classes and had said goodbye to her friends at the bus stop where they all boarded the school bus. However, Abby had chosen to walk home. None of Abby's friends had seen her. She didn't stop by anyone's house, and she didn't call anyone. Even Jimmy couldn't reach her, though they had plans to meet later that day. Terrified, Zenya and her older daughter, Sarah, wasted no time and went straight to the police to report Abby's disappearance. Since Abby was a minor, the search for her began right away. Investigators found that the last signal from her phone was about a mile from her home. News about the missing high schooler quickly spread on social media. Flyers with Abby's photo, a description of her clothes, and a contact number for tips were printed and handed out. By the next morning, her story aired on the 7 a.m. news, asking anyone with information to come forward. Hundreds of police officers, volunteers, and concerned citizens joined the search for the 14-year-old. They searched parks, empty lots, wooded areas, water bodies, and abandoned buildings. Police followed leads, looked for witnesses, and talked to Abby's friends and family. But every effort came up empty. The first suspect, detectives, tried to figure out if Abby had enemies, grudges, or a stalker. But everyone said she was friendly, open, and kind-hearted. Abby was the life of the party and never got into conflicts. None of her friends had ever heard of anyone harassing or following her. One of the first people detectives interviewed was her boyfriend, Jimmy, who quickly became a suspect. They asked if he and Abby had any arguments, if he was upset with her, or if he had any reason to harm her. Jimmy was shocked by the questions and couldn't believe they thought he could hurt her. Jimmy had a solid alibi for the time Abby disappeared, backed by his family, teachers, and about a dozen friends. That day, his schedule was packed. School, sports practice, band rehearsals, and his grandfather's birthday party. He attended all of these without missing anything. Jimmy cooperated fully with the investigation and shared everything he knew. But it didn't bring the police any closer to finding Abby. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. Despite months of searching, there wasn't a single clue or hint about where Abby could be. Detectives knew the chances of finding her alive were shrinking, but her family refused to give up hope. The mysterious letter, about a month and a half after Abby's disappearance. Her mother found a strange letter from Abby in their mailbox. In the letter, Abby asked for forgiveness for what she had done and said she was okay, healthy, and safe. She wrote that she loved her mum and Sarah but couldn't reveal where she was. At the end of the letter was a strange and puzzling phrase: "Asterisk dreams come true." Handwriting analysis confirmed that the letter was written by Abby, and it was dated early November. This meant there was a good chance she was still alive. But where was she, and why couldn't she explain why she had disappeared? Was she scared, or had someone forced her to write it? A theory quickly emerged that Abby had run away from home. People thought she might have seen the news about herself and wanted to let her family know she was alive. There was even speculation that Abby might have been pregnant and had run away with the baby's father, afraid of her family's reaction and judgment from others. However, the Hernandez family strongly denied this theory. Sarah said that if Abby had been pregnant, she would have been the first to know, as they were very close and shared everything. Besides, Abby's only boyfriend was Jimmy, and he stated that they hadn't been intimate. They were both still virgins. Abby's friends supported this, confirming she hadn't dated anyone else or talked about other crushes. Her best friend, Miranda, also insisted Abby wasn't pregnant and wouldn't have run away knowing how much it would hurt her mum and sister. All of Abby's important belongings, her documents, savings, and valuables, were still at home. Investigators analyzed the letter carefully, hoping to find any hidden clues or messages about her location. Unfortunately, there was nothing like that. Despite this, the FBI got involved and classified the case as an abduction. They believed Abby was being held against her will and that the letter was written under strict orders, with no chance for her to share her location. This assumption turned out to be correct. The kidnapper and Abby were only a few dozen miles from the Hernandez home. What's even more chilling is that police had visited the kidnapper's house multiple times since Abby's disappearance, but found nothing suspicious. Meanwhile, the man felt trapped and was desperately trying to decide what to do with his captive. Who is Nathaniel Kibbe? Now it's time to meet the kidnapper. Nathaniel, or Nate, Kibbe, was born on July 15, 1980, in the same town as Abby. Not much is known about his family, but some sources say he was raised by his mum and never knew his biological father. In school, Nate was a troublemaker and a bully, the kid everyone was scared of. He often got into fights and clashed with others. Even more disturbing, he kept a list of people he disliked and planned to hurt. From a young age, he showed aggression and cruelty, causing his peers to avoid him and his teachers to struggle with his behavior. As a teenager, Nate frequently caught the attention of the police for various crimes. He was part of a gang, proud of it, and had a fascination with guns. He often got into trouble for assault, causing serious injuries, drug possession, and petty theft, but he usually avoided serious punishment. Interestingly, Nate had attended the same high school as Abby. But since he was 18 years older than her, Nathaniel and Abby never crossed paths, either in school or outside of it. After finishing high school, it seemed like Nathaniel tried to turn his life around and leave his criminal behavior behind. He got a job at a local business, and most of his co-workers and managers had a generally positive view of him. However, after a major conflict a few years later, Nate quit his job, moved to the suburbs, and settled in a trailer park in a struggling neighborhood. His neighbors thought he was odd and aggressive, so they tried to avoid him. In 2011, Kibbe, by then in his 30s, began living with a young girl. She was from a troubled family, had run away from home, and moved into his trailer. Shockingly, Nate didn't try to hide their relationship and introduced her as his girlfriend. Despite this, he wasn't punished or held accountable for his actions. In the spring of 2013, Nate attempted his first kidnapping, but he failed. He attacked a 15-year-old schoolgirl at a bus stop near her school, trying to force her into his car. However, the girl fought back fiercely, managed to break free, and screamed for help. Passers-by ran to her aid, and the attacker quickly fled the scene. Surprisingly, despite witness statements and the girl's testimony, the case was closed without going to trial. For reasons unknown, no one seemed to think Nate posed a serious threat. A kind stranger. Now, let's go back to the day Abigail disappeared, October 9th, 2013. As mentioned earlier, Abby had received a pair of hiking boots as a gift before her 15th birthday. Since the boots were a little tight, she decided to wear them to school to break them in before her hiking trip. By the end of the school day, Abby realized the boots were causing her pain, but she didn't give up and started walking home. Each step hurt more than the last, and the long walk ahead felt almost impossible. Suddenly, an old pickup truck, driven by Nathaniel, pulled up beside her. The smiling man offered her a ride anywhere she wanted to go, but Abby refused. However, the stranger didn't give up and continued to drive slowly alongside her. Nate noticed that Abby was limping and asked her what had happened. Abby sighed and explained that her new boots were too tight and had given her a blister. Hearing this, the man swung open the passenger door and told her to hop in. After hesitating for a moment, Abby accepted. She thought the kind man couldn't possibly be dangerous, but she was terribly wrong. On the way, Kibbe tried to make small talk, doing his best to make Abby feel comfortable. He succeeded. Abby felt safe answering his questions and even laughing at his jokes. At one point, the man said he needed to stop by a hardware store to pick up some things for a repair job. As they pulled into a dark parking lot, Abigail grew nervous. She told him that her house wasn't far and that she could walk the rest of the way. Seeing the unsettling look in his eyes, she tried to unbuckle her seatbelt and jump out of the car. But Nate was ready for this. In one swift motion, he grabbed her by the clothes with one hand and pulled a gun from the glove compartment with the other. He pointed it at her face and threatened to kill her if she tried to resist. The attacker then tied her hands and feet with zip ties and placed a baseball cap on her head to block her view, ensuring she couldn't see where they were going. but Abby tried to shift the cap to see the road, which angered Nate. He pulled out a stun gun and shocked her until she lost consciousness. Imprisoned by a sadist, when Abby woke up, she found herself in a strange, cramped, and suffocating space. There were no windows. It turned out she was inside a small shipping container that Nathaniel owned, hidden in the back of the trailer park, surrounded by trees. Soon, the kidnapper appeared, holding duct tape and a motorcycle helmet. He taped her mouth and eyes shut and placed the helmet on her head. Once he had made sure she was completely immobilized, he tore off her clothes and assaulted her. From that moment on, he repeatedly forced himself on her every day, turning his twisted fantasies into reality. Nate also used psychological abuse on his captive, threatening to hurt her family if she ever tried to escape or call for help. At the same time, he promised that he would let her go if she behaved and didn't cause him any trouble. During the first few days of her captivity, Abigail was in shock, almost resigned to the idea that she would never see her family again. But as time passed, she realized that her captor wasn't planning to kill her, at least not yet. She decided to try to connect with him emotionally, hoping to convince him to release her. She told him that she didn't judge him, that everyone makes mistakes, and that she wouldn't go to the police if he just let her go back to her family. However, Nate was unpredictable. The smallest thing could set him off and turn him into a monster. Sometimes he showed a twisted kindness, but most of the time, he was brutal, using both emotional and physical abuse against her. The container where he kept Abby was soundproof, so no one outside could hear her screams. But after about a month, he began bringing her into his trailer, allowing her to take showers and even watch TV with him. Through the news, they learned about the search for Abby, which led Kibby to come up with a plan. He wanted her to write a letter to her mother to convince her that Abigail was fine and to try to stop the search for her. Abigail wrote several letters under his direction, but each time, she tried to leave a hint about where to find her. Nate always saw through it and punished her severely. Eventually, she followed his instructions to avoid provoking him. Around 6 months later, Nate started trusting Abigail enough to let her help him with his counterfeit money operation. Sometimes, he allowed her to sleep in his trailer and even trusted her to cook for him. Despite this, he remained as brutal as ever, continuing to abuse her. He forced her to call him master and kept his real name a secret. Over time, Abby managed to build some rapport with him. He even agreed to bring her books and magazines. One day, she saw the name Nathaniel Kibby in one of the books. She wasn't sure if that was really his name, but she decided to take a dangerous gamble. One day, she simply called him by the name, waiting for any reaction. He just rolled his eyes, sighed, and calmly asked how she knew his name. Abigail admitted that she had seen it in one of the books. He smirked but didn't say anything. Help was closer than she knew. Since Abby spent most of her time in the soundproof container, she had no idea what was happening outside. She didn't know that at one point, the police had been just a few feet away from her. However, they were there for a completely unrelated reason. You see, Nate had once again broken the law, and in an attempt to avoid serious trouble, Nathaniel decided to cooperate with law enforcement by admitting to illegally owning a firearm. The police came with a search warrant and thoroughly inspected his trailer. However, they didn't think to check the shipping container. For some reason, no one considered looking inside. Because Nate cooperated, he only received a fine, and his weapon was confiscated. Despite everything terrible he'd done, he still avoided real consequences. It seemed like luck was on his side, and he probably felt unstoppable. He had no plans to release Abby. To him, she had become part of his daily routine. A new girlfriend and a miracle escape. In July 2014, Nathaniel met a woman named Lorraine at a bar. After chatting for a while, he invited her back to his trailer, where they became intimate. Later, Lorraine told him about her financial troubles, saying she couldn't even pay her rent. Before she left, Nate handed her two $50 bills. The next day, Lorraine angrily called him, saying the money he'd given her was fake. She yelled that she had already reported the counterfeit bills to the police and warned him they'd soon come with a search warrant. What Lorraine didn't realize was that her call would change Abby's life forever. On July 20th, Nate suddenly handed Abby all her belongings, tied her hands, made her sit in the passenger seat of his car, and covered her face with a baseball cap. Abby had no idea what was happening and feared he was planning to kill her. But instead, Nate stopped on a deserted country road, untied her, and told her to get out and don't you dare go to the police. Abby stepped out of the car, and Nate sped off. She couldn't believe what was happening. As she walked down the road in a daze, she saw a sign and realized she was close to home. It took her a couple of hours to get there. Later, Abby said she kept looking over her shoulder, afraid Nate might come back, but he didn't. Coming home, the Hernandez family had a surveillance camera at their front door, which captured the moment Abby returned. She heard her mum talking on the phone and called out to her. In shock, her mum dropped the phone and ran to the door. They hugged tightly, crying and unable to believe they were together again. Abby noticed how much her mum had changed. She looked older and worn out from months of worry. Zenya immediately started asking where Abby had been and what had happened, suggesting they go straight to the police. But remembering Nate's threats, Abby lied. She said she didn't know who had taken her or where she had been held. Even at the police station, Abby refused to reveal Nate's name, terrified he might harm her family. Over the next week, she struggled with what to do. Eventually, she confided in her mum, who urged her to tell the police, insisting the man needed to face justice. Zenya reminded Abby that they would never truly be safe while Nate was free. Arrest, trial, and sentencing. On July 27, 2014, Abigail finally revealed her kidnapper's name and the details of his car. The next day, Nate Kibbe was arrested. Surprisingly, he didn't resist but denied the charges. However, when the police searched his trailer and the container, they found undeniable evidence of Abby's captivity, including her hair, blood, sweat, and even broken fingernails. Despite the overwhelming proof, Nate's lawyer requested bail, and shockingly, the judge approved it in August. The public was outraged, but a restraining order was issued, prohibiting Kibbe from contacting Abby or her family. The trial began in December 2014 and lasted until May 2016. Nate eventually agreed to a plea deal, admitting his guilt to receive a lighter sentence. He was sentenced to 90 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 45 years. In court, Abigail said she forgave her captor and shared that the ordeal taught her to cherish her life and time with loved ones even more. Zenya also spoke, expressing her hatred for Kibbe, but gratitude that he allowed Abby to return home alive. Conclusion: Abigail Hernandez's ordeal is a chilling reminder of the dangers lurking in seemingly ordinary moments. Her bravery, resilience, and eventual escape demonstrate the strength of the human spirit even in the darkest times. While Nathaniel Kibbe will spend decades behind bars for his heinous crimes, Abigail's story continues to inspire people to cherish their loved ones and remain cautious of strangers. Today, Abby is a survivor, not a victim, proving that even after unimaginable hardships, hope and healing are possible. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe for more shocking stories coming soon.